let's get into reading. So, here's a technique that we teach on reading. Let me start with this. SAT and ACT reading are different than the reading you do in English class in school. In English class at school, you're often rewarded for coming up with your own unique individual insights about the story and putting it together in a paper. In these stories, you are human command F. In these stories in the SAT and ACT, your job is just to find the exact line in the passage that supports the right answer that you're choosing. And they'll ask you about random details and facts. It's not so much about picking up the important parts of the passage necessarily. It's just sometimes it's very random detail about when something took place or who said what. So you kind of have to absorb everything. And let's look at what makes it hard to absorb the story. For a lot of students, they're reading too quickly because they feel time pressure. And when you're reading too quickly, you can't really absorb what you're reading. And then you don't retain it well and you don't know which answers to choose. For other students, their mind wanders. They're just bored and their mind goes somewhere else. And so we have arrived at a technique that helps you stay totally on track and stay at your natural reading pace of absorbing the information. So let me show you how it works. We call it the cross-out method. And with your pen and pencil, as you're reading, you want to cross out about roughly 2 to 5 words at a time as you read. And you're literally crossing out as you read. And there's a lot of information and studies that show that when you track what you're watching with your hand, your brain retains it even more. So that might be one reason why this technique seems to work really well for students. So here's how you do it. It'd say, my mother tells me stories. That's 5 words. Every day, 2 words. While she cleans, 3 words. While she cooks, 3 words. On her way to the library, what's that, like 6? That's okay. Standing in the checkout line at the supermarket. So it's these little crossouts as you go. And here's a key rule that you have to hold yourself to. You are not allowed to do your next crossout, like I like to share her stories with other people, unless you know you've processed everything up until this point. And so you're constantly checking in. Am I following? Am I following? If you're not, suddenly realize you're not following the story, go back and reread until the last point where you were following. And then go back to there and just reabsorb the story from there as you go. So, 2 to 5 word crossouts as you go. And another thing to notice is if your mind has wandered and you've lost your attention, put a little star in the margin. And what that star in the margin does is it tells you, hey, we weren't paying attention. And you're starting to train your brain to notice whether or not you're noticing. Train your brain to notice whether or not you're absorbing the story or not. And anytime you're not, just put a little star in the margin. And if you have a star in the margin, you're going to go down to 2-word crossouts. 2-word crossouts for a single line. So you'd be like, to share her stories with other people and chat away. And that's just a way to get you back on track, absorbing the passage, phrase by phrase. And after that first line, you can go back to 2 to 5 words or so, when I am able to command adult attention. So 2 to 5 word crossouts as you go. It's going to slow you down to your natural rate of absorption. It's going to keep you absorbing every single little detail, and you're noticing whether or not you're paying attention and putting a star in the margin anytime you've lost place in the story and you're not following it anymore. That's how you go through the whole story. And let me show you how this has worked for some other students. Now, some common concerns, by the way, with this technique are, oh, but if I cross everything out when I go back to find the answers, how am I going to see it if it's all crossed out? That's only a worry you have before you've done it. Once you've done it, you realize you can go back and easily reread. Another concern is that it will take too long and it's too slow. And so for that, I've got to tell you that it usually takes about 4 or 5 full practice sections before you can do this and finish in real time. The first couple times you do it will be really slow and you won't finish in time. And that's okay. It takes time to get used to tracking every little phrase so closely like you're doing here. We're not used to reading this way. But it's not often that you have to absorb an entire passage in the way that you do it for SAT and ACT. So it's an unusual exercise that requires an unusual technique. Don't worry that the technique seems really strange. It's an unusual test. So anyway, let me take you through a couple students. So this is actually the first student we ever used this technique with. And the very first time she did it on a single passage, it took her 15 minutes, 42 seconds to finish the passage, and she did okay. She got 7 out of 10. Not great. Next time she does it, she does 2 passages, and they each take her 12 minutes. So it's a lot quicker, actually. She gets 9 out of 10, 8 out of 10. She's even a little more accurate. Then she does 2 more passages the next time for homework and finishes them in 11:24 and 9:45. She's getting quicker. Then she does a full section. She's only 3 minutes overtime. And 9 out of 10s on every passage. You know, and you can tell her times are getting quicker. 11 minutes, 8 minutes, 10.5 minutes, 9 minutes. And so you'll see as she keeps doing passages, now she finishes her first section in time. 5 wrong, not bad. This time she finishes with 2 minutes, 50 seconds left. So now she's finishing in time. 5 wrong. 2.5 minutes left here. Finishes with 8 minutes left, 7 minutes left here. So she's really getting fast with these crossout techniques. And in her last couple tests, only 3 wrong. And on the actual ACT, she literally got a perfect 36 in the reading section. Couldn't believe it. She used to have such issues with reading. She could only read books if there was an audiobook version of it. And what we realized is she was just always trying to go too fast. She was so anxious in her head about it that she was always pushing herself to go faster than she could actually comprehend the stories. And ironically, when she slowed down to her natural rate of comprehension, she absorbed the passage fully. And then she just knew where the answers were in the text and was actually able to finish passages quicker by slowing her reading down to the rate of her natural comprehension with the crossouts. She never thought in a million years she'd get a 36 on ACT reading. And it works just as well on the SAT. It's the exact same exercise. And I'll show you another student here. What you'll see here is the very first time he ever used this technique. It took him 9.5 minutes just to read the passage, not even answer the questions yet. His first full section, 11 minutes overtime. Next one, 3 minutes overtime. Next one, 1 minute overtime. Now, finally, about his 5th test, he's finishing with 3 minutes left at the end. Then he's 40 seconds over, okay. We'll backtrack. Now he finishes with 1:30 left. A minute left. Finishes right on time. 2 minutes left. But check that out, only 2 wrong. Got a 35 there. First 3 passages, all 10 out of 10s. And you'll see as he goes, he actually finishes this passage. Now this student, Jack, he found that he preferred the 2-word crossout that you do only when you've lost your attention. He'd like to do that throughout the entire passage. Really interesting. And I mean, he finishes this one in 5 minutes, 25 seconds. That's the fastest passage I've ever seen anyone do. And here he gets 36, only 1 wrong, finishes with 4 minutes left. In the end, Jack got a 35 on his real ACT reading. And so what you'll notice is it takes about 5 tests before you start finishing in time. But let yourself be slow the first few times you do it. You're just getting used to the crossouts, and you'll find that as you just let yourself practice it and do it in its natural pace, it will start to get quicker and quicker and quicker. And soon you'll actually you'll be absorbing the passages and finishing them quicker than you ever have in the past with this technique. It's very surprising and counterintuitive how it works. Countless students have said this technique has helped them so much. So that is it. Next video, we'll get into how to answer the questions on SAT and ACT reading, and we'll also check in probably another video about the passage A, passage B type passages. So that's it. Get to work practicing your crossout method. 2 to 5 word crossouts. Only allow your next crossout if you know you've processed everything in the passage up until that point. And anytime you notice your attention is wandered, put a little star in the margin, training your brain to start to notice when you're absorbing the passage versus not. And that's how you do these reading passages. That's it. You don't have to summarize anything for yourself. You don't have to highlight key points necessarily. Just these crossouts so that you're absorbing the passage at your natural pace and really paying attention to whether or not you're paying attention. All right.